My heartbreaking journey began when my son abandoned me in a nursing home for a new life. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. I sat in that sterile, cold room, staring at the dull beige walls. The scent of antiseptic hung in the air, mixing with the faint whiff of something rotting. A trembling hand clutched my old photo of him, smiling, fresh-faced, unaware of the storm that raged within me. He promised to come back. He said he would check in. But the days turned into weeks, and then months. Each time I heard footsteps in the hall, my heart would race. Hope blossomed, only to wither away as the door opened and another stranger walked in with pity-filled eyes. I could feel the weight of their whispers, their judgment. How could a son leave his mother like this? I'd spent my life caring for him, sacrificing my dreams, my freedom. Now, I was just another forgotten soul in a place that drained not just life but spirit. The flickering fluorescent lights felt like a cruel joke, illuminating the shadows of regret. Each night, I lay awake, listening to the groans and murmurs of the others, their stories lost to time. I felt invisible, and then, as if the universe had conspired to rip open the wound, a mysterious neighbor appeared. Harriet was a firecracker, hair as wild as her spirit. She often told me about escape plans, about the secret garden hidden behind the nursing home. "It's a place where we can breathe," she'd exclaim, her eyes bright with mischief. But behind her laughter, I sensed something deeper, a pain that matched my own. She spoke of her son, too, how he vanished into his own life, leaving her with unanswered questions. As she shared her stories, I felt the knot in my chest tighten. Could there be a connection between the two of us? Had our sons made a pact to abandon their mothers in these walls of despair? The more I listened, the more the idea of the garden consumed me. It became my obsession. I envisioned wild flowers breaking through the concrete, filling our lungs with sweet, fresh air. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. Why would they choose to sever our bonds? This thirst for freedom loomed ever larger in my heart, igniting a flame of rebellion against the chains that bound us here, and on one unsuspecting day, Harriet confided in me. "There's something you need to know about your son," she said, her voice trembling, eyes locking onto mine. My heart raced. What could she possibly mean? A heaviness settled in the room, an electric tension rippling through the air. What if he was not just being cruel? What if there was more to his sudden disappearance? A sense of urgency enveloped me, and I felt unmoored. I wanted to scream, to confront him, but was there even a point? Would my pleas be lost in the same void where our past memories lay buried? With the sunlight streaming into my room, a single question loomed larger than the rest. What had he found that was worth abandoning his mother? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The following days lagged like a tape that had lost its grip. Time felt distorted within those sterile walls. In the cruel silence of my room, the weight of Harriet's confession hung heavily, wrapping around my heart like a vice. I replayed her words, "There's something you need to know about your son," over and over again, desperately seeking a glimmer of understanding. What truth lay behind the darkness of his abandonment? That afternoon, Harriet suggested we escape our confining walls, if only for a few fleeting moments. "We can sneak out to the garden," she insisted, her face breaking into a mischievous grin that seemed to momentarily uplift the dullness around us. I hesitated, battling the swirling emotions that clutched at my entire being. The idea of leaving felt reckless, but the longing for fresh air and light was intoxicating. "Give me a minute," I finally whispered, my heart racing at the thought of stepping outside the prison of expectations and heartbreak. With careful movements, we slipped through a forgotten door at the edge of the building, one that hadn't been used in ages. The creaking hinges felt like an omen, but we pressed on, an unlikely duo united by despair and undying hope. The world outside burst into view, colors so vibrant they thrummed with life. Small flowers pushed through tufts of grass, the fragrance of blooming petals designed to intoxicate the senses. For the first time in what felt like years, laughter spilled from my lips. Harriet twirled amongst the wildflowers, her glee infectious. In that moment, I felt a fleeting sense of freedom, an illusion, perhaps, but I clung to it like a shipwrecked sailor to a piece of driftwood. "Isn't it beautiful?" she breathed, standing still, arms wide open as if she could capture the whole world in her embrace. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "It's a reminder," she added, "that we are still alive, that we can still fight." But her words held a depth I couldn't fully grasp then, a life lesson bittersweetly connected to our struggle. As we re-entered the nursing home, a sinking feeling rushed back into my chest. I only wanted to forget for a little longer, if only those walls didn't loom so prominently in my mind. Later that evening, while I lay in bed, the laughter faded, replaced by the lingering shadows of what I had heard. I longed to see my son, to demand answers, yet another part of me felt paralyzed by fear. What if I had lost him entirely? In an unexpected twist, the next day brought a letter, slid under my door without a word. Its crumpled edges and faint pencil scrawl were unmistakable. My heart pounded as I recognized the handwriting. A sense of urgency propelled me to open it. "Mom," it read, "I need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe around the corner, 2 p.m. It felt like a lifeline thrown into a tempest, but confusion also swirled in the eddies of my thoughts. Why now? What had changed? Hope flickered, battling against the storm of my doubts. Suddenly, I was swept away in emotions that taunted and tormented me. In mere hours, I would face the son I once cradled in my arms, now a stranger brushing the periphery of my life, but alongside that hope, I felt a knot of fear coil tighter within me. What if he didn't want me back? What if he was angry? What if he didn't even miss me? My fingers trembled as I fumbled the crumpled letter, desperate to calm the rising tide of anguish that threatened to engulf me once again. As I pulled the curtain open, I caught a glimpse of Harriet's silhouette in the courtyard below. She was sitting on one of the benches, lost in thought. Maybe she was grappling with her own worries. Or perhaps she was pondering the bittersweet nature of hope itself. I watched her for a moment, wishing for her strength to infuse my own soul as I prepared for the confrontation ahead. With my heart pounding in my chest, I decided to call out to her, offering a fragile smile to mask my swirling emotions. But when I opened my mouth to speak, the words caught in the back of my throat. Instead, I whispered a prayer into the evening breeze, hoping for clarity. Amidst the chaos, one way or another, answers were coming whether I was ready or not. As the sun dipped low in the sky, I couldn't shake the feeling of something creeping closer, something I couldn't yet see. It was lurking in the dark corners of my fears, a truth that would eventually break free and shatter everything I thought I knew. But that revelation was yet to come, for now, the clock ticked down to a fateful reunion, pulsating with uncertainty and possibility. The morning sun filtered weakly through the haze of cloud cover, as if hesitant to embrace the day. I found myself dressed in the same faded clothes I'd only worn on carefree weekends, an unfamiliar urge compelling me to appear polished, ready somehow for what lay ahead. But it was an illusion, a mask to shield me from the vulnerability that clawed at my insides. I studied my reflection in the cracked mirror, searching for the woman who had once radiated warmth and love. A stranger stared back, haunted by memories of loss and longing. The moment dragged on as the clock chimed, signaling the approach of 2 p.m. I left my room, silently crossing the perplexing threshold between hope and dread. Every step was both a march and a retreat, as though I were entangled in a dance with my own indecision. I murmured a mantra against the insipid murmur of the nursing home, "You'll be okay, you're not alone." Yet, the words felt hollow, empty husks that sailed through the stagnant air. As I stepped into the bustling cafe, the rich aromas of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around me like a coat, trying to stave off the chill that had settled in my bones. My gaze swept the room, heart racing, searching for him amongst laughter and casual chatter. The patron seemed so blissfully unaware of the weight that clung to my heart, an unwelcome reminder that my world had been shattered while theirs spun on. And then I saw him, my son, seated at a table in the corner. For a moment, I was transported back in time to those fleeting years when his laughter echoed throughout our home, a melody drowning out my fears of inadequacy. But the young man before me was different. He looked older than I remembered, a ruggedness etching his features. A scattering of dark hair fell across his forehead, and a distant look smoldered within his warm brown eyes, similar to mine yet filled with untold stories. As I approached slowly, the dissonance of my hope and fear swirled into a tempest, battling within me as I offered the most tentative of smiles. His lips pulled into a reluctant curve, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mom," he said softly, a quiet greeting that echoed of a longing I feared was drowned beneath layers of hurt. "Hi, sweetheart," I managed, my voice shaking, each syllable weighted with unspoken apologies and regrets. We sat in silence as the servers floated by, drinks being poured with warmth that felt foreign. It felt as though we were on separate islands, adrift in a sea churning with unresolved pain. Finally, he broke the silence. "I didn't know if you'd come." The tension in his statement wrapped around us, a reminder of my absence and abandonment that mirrored the empty seat across from me. "2 couldn't pass up the chance," I admitted, my heart racing. "I've missed you so much." My eyes pleaded with him to understand the depth of my longing. "I missed you too, but it's complicated," the admission hung in the air, fraught with unsaid emotions. I summoned courage, ready to brave the storm brewing behind his guarded demeanor. "Harriet told me you might have something important to share." With a tense sigh, he ran a hand through his hair, a telltale sign of his anxiety. "I've made some choices, wrong ones, I guess." His eyes flickered away, indicating the fractures that dictated the existence of his life choices I was both too fearful and desperate to uncover fully. "Talk to me," I urged gently. "I want to help. I'm here. Please, let me in." I could feel tears beginning to pool, threatening to break free as my heart screamed for understanding. Just then, the bell on the door chimed, and a girl entered, vibrant, fearless, and laughing like the sun itself. Her presence illuminated the cafe, shifting my son's attention momentarily. There was something about her he knew, the spark igniting embarrassment behind his facade. I felt an unwelcomed pang of fear, shattering the hopeful cocoon I clutched dearly. "Is that?" I began, a breath caught in my throat as everything I feared began to spiral. "Chloe," he finished for me, the weight of his voice carrying a small, tender affection that stung me fiercely. She approached our table with a bright smile, absolutely unaware of the past that cloaked the air around us. "Hey," she said to him, her eyes catching mine as she extended a hand. "You must be his mom. I've heard so much about you." There was warmth in her greeting, but beneath it lurked something raw and painful, something I couldn't quite place. My chest tightened with an unspoken question, the depth of my isolation becoming more pronounced. While they both smiled, light danced around a light I was no longer part of. The surface of our fragile moment erupted as I braced myself for a truth I was not prepared to face. And as dread washed over my heart, I realized that something monumental was ready to unfold. I was teetering on the brink, about to plunge into the revelation that would threaten to unravel all I understood about my son and the choices that had woven him into the fabric of his new life. As my blinkers fell away, the cafe dimmed, and a shocking truth loomed before me, threatening to blow apart the fragile reconnection I fought so hard to build. The coffee shop buzzed with the hum of conversations, but for me, everything had narrowed down to a single point of focus: Chloe. Her presence shimmered like a knife's edge slicing through the dense fog of my thoughts. I felt the bitter chill of isolation deepen as she greeted my son with an ease I had once known, worn out from absence, yet still undeniably bright. "Chloe," I repeated softly, trying to anchor myself within the storm swirling around us. "It's nice to meet you." The words felt like lead in my mouth, heavy with unspoken questions. "Mom, this is Chloe. She's been really supportive," he said, his voice dipping with an inflection I couldn't ignore, a mixture of gratitude and apprehension that twisted my gut. "It's great to finally meet you," Chloe said again. "Jake talks about you and how excited he was to see you today." "Jake. My son." My heart swelled with a strange mixture of pride and something darker. I wanted to believe that his excitement could fill the chasm between us, but the hopeful notion waned against the shadows lurking in his eyes. "I hope he says nice things," I managed to respond, forcing a timid smile. The vibrant girl's laughter felt like a stark contrast to the gravity of my son's demeanor. She turned to him, her voice lilting with affection. "Have you told her about the band?" The one we're forming? I felt my throat tighten. A band? I echoed, heart racing like a trapped bird. I was searching for context, for some navigable pathway through the chaos. Jake shifted in his seat, and I could see the weight of his decision pressing down on him. It's just something we do on the weekends. It helps pass the time, he replied, turning momentarily serious. Chloe's face brightened as she added, he's an incredible guitarist. I swear, every time we jam, it's like him hearing the universe. There was a flicker of something genuine in his eyes, a brief glimmer that had once been so familiar. But it was drowned by a tide of doubt. That sounds wonderful, I said, though I felt like a spectator in my own son's life, watching him scale heights I had no part in. Chloe's smile faltered for just a second, and I caught the shadow of concern that flickered between them before she beamed again, as if to shield him from whatever storm loomed nearby. You should come see us perform. It's going to be fun, she urged, drawing him back into the moment. I swallowed hard. I would love to come. The words barely breached my lips, shadowed by the fear that my son was slipping further away, tethered to this radiance while I dimmed into the background. After a pause, Jake looked back at me, the guardedness emerging anew. Mom, can we talk about something? Just us? Chloe's vibrant spirit dimmed just slightly, and I could hear her shift uncomfortably in her seat as if she sensed a necessary distance. Sure, I can run out for a bit. You two catch up. She chirped, but her eyes gave away the uncertainty that I just need to check on a thing in the car, she added hastily, and the way her smile dipped suggested it was more than a simple errand. I glanced at Jake, who remained unyielding, eyes like deep embers, revealing a conflict that echoed loudly in their silence. Once Chloe left, the cafe felt more deserted, shadows stretching across the table like accusing fingers. I recognized the moment as pivotal. Our fragile reconnection clung to the precipice of unresolved tension. Jake, I began, my voice trembling, yet determination seeped through each syllable. I know I haven't been there for you. I can't undo what's been done, but I'm here now. I want to understand. What choices have you made? Why is there so much distance between us? He sighed, deeply entangled in the web of his emotions. It's hard to explain, Mom. I thought things would go smooth. He struggled against himself, as if trying to cast down the weight of 1,000 words that begged to be spoken. Sweetheart, please, I pressed gently, talk to me. You can't keep me on the outside anymore. And just as he was about to unveil the secrets that wrapped him in shadows, the door swung open again, pulling our attention. My breath caught in my throat as a familiar figure stepped into the cafe. Angela, she moved like a specter, and I could feel my heart plummeting to the pit of my stomach. The anger, regret, and memories spiraled together, a jarring reminder of the election of our real past. She had always been a part of Jake's life, a circular figure whose presence haunted the crevices of my own. Jake! She called, the utterance sharp, but strangely inviting. A sudden pallor washed over his face, signaling that something had shifted in the atmosphere, the conversation dying instantly. I felt the sensation of cold fingers grasping my heart as I watched this unexpected reunion draw closer. As Jake and Angela exchanged glances filled with unspoken familiarity, I sensed a riptide forming, a current strong enough to pull my son back into depths I had only feared existed. A hazy drama prepared to unfold amidst the bright cafe lights, and I was left suspended in the uncertainty of it all, enveloped in a growing realization. The truth was circling back towards us, and as it approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that some lines were about to intertwine we may never untangle. In that split second, I understood that the extraordinary connection that Chloe had illuminated was threatened, poised to shatter with Angela's next words as the revelation loomed on the horizon. The silence in the cafe thickened like a heavy fog, each second stretching endlessly as Angela approached our table. I clutched my coffee cup, fingers trembling against the warm porcelain, my mind racing to anticipate the collision of past and present that lay ahead. Jake's gaze darted between me and Angela, a tempest of conflicting emotions reflecting in his eyes. Hey, Jake, Angela said, her voice imbued with a casual familiarity that felt like nails scraping against my resolve. She settled into the chair beside him, an effortless smile gracing her lips. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd see you. The innocence in her tone struck me deeply, it was a dagger slicing through the fragile atmosphere I had hoped to cultivate with Jake. This was unwanted confrontation, old wounds gasping for air as if they hadn't been sealed for far too long. Hi, Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The spark we'd shared moments before flickered, and I felt it extinguish under the weight of Angela's presence. I opened my mouth to respond, but my voice faltered. I didn't know what to say in this moment when my carefully constructed world had begun to crumble. It didn't help that Angela seemed completely oblivious to the tension she had invoked. She turned her gaze toward me, a challenge dancing in her eyes. "You must be Jake's mom," she said, the words laced with a sweetness that felt insincere. "Yes," I managed, my heart thudding wildly as I faced her. "And you are an unexpected guest." Bitterness crept into my voice, and I could see Jake wince, a fleeting flicker of helplessness reflected across his features. Her smile faltered momentarily. "I know what you're thinking. I didn't mean to intrude. I just wanted to check on him." As she said this, an underlying current of possessiveness seeped through her tone. "We were just getting things together for our band," she added, casting a knowing glance at Jake. "A band." The word echoed in my mind like an alarm bell, the gnawing fear bubbling back to the surface. I looked at my son, desperation clawing at my insides, urging him to openly share the details he had withheld just moments before Angela's arrival, but he merely nodded, his face too guarded to reveal the truth. "Jake," I started again but was abruptly cut off by the playful jibe Angela tossed his way. "You're still coming to the party this weekend, right? I want to show everyone how amazing you are." My heart sank further, each syllable like another weight anchoring me down. "That I am not sure," he replied, his voice tight. "I need to think about it." The hesitance dripped in hesitation and guilt, a stark contrast to the earlier excitement. Angela's demeanor shifted slightly, her eyebrows raising as if to challenge Jake's reluctance. "Come on, it'll be fun. Besides, you have to support the band you're a part of," she urged, her enthusiasm almost infectious, but it felt like venom seeping into our delicate conversation. "Maybe Jake and I can talk privately," I interjected, trying to reclaim space amidst her overwhelming presence. "Talk about what, exactly?" Angela smirked, placing her hand gently on Jake's forearm, an intimate gesture that made bile rise in my throat. "You two seem to have so much to catch up on." She spun the words like a web, deliberately tangling us together in a dramatic dance I didn't want to participate in. "Mom," Jake hesitated again, wrestling as if between two worlds. The moment cascaded into silence, the weight of my anticipation heavy on my chest. My hope began to wane with each tick of the clock, the time lost between us hovering like a ghost. Just as I was about to speak again, perhaps to unleash the storm that brewed within me, a small voice sliced through my swirling thoughts. "Hey, is everything okay?" Chloe re-entered the cafe, her bright energy radiating like sun breaking through storm clouds. The relief that washed over me was fleeting, as Angela's possessive grip on Jake only tightened. I could sense Chloe's awareness of the tension, and her smile faltered, sensing the shift in dynamics. We were just talking," Jake replied slowly, the word talking feeling painfully inadequate to encapsulate what was unraveling. "You just missed the actually, we should probably get going," Angela interrupted, gleeful urgency lacing her voice as if she sensed the storm brewing. "We have rehearsal to prepare for, right, Jake?" I could only watch in horror as Jake nodded, resignation melting away the last remnants of my hope. "Yeah, I need to finish some things with Angela," he said quietly, turning away from me as if the act of releasing those words also severed the last threads of our connection. As they stood up together, I felt as if the ground had been pulled beneath my feet. "Jake," I breathed, my voice catching with desperation. "When will I see you again?" His eyes flared with conflict, a silent war raging within him. "I'll call you," was all he managed before they drifted away, leaving me anchored to the table. Chloe glanced back, concern flickering in her eyes, but there was nothing she could do to mend the fracture spreading through the air. I swallowed my rising emotions, fighting a flood of panic, fear, and regret. As they walked away, Angela leaned closer to him, whispering something I couldn't catch but could instinctively sense was meant to seal my presence in the past. The door closed behind them, and I sat there, marooned in a void, heart aching with the shock of unfolding betrayal. I felt utterly lost. Time slipped away as memories of laughter, love, and joy crashed into the suffocating reality of loss. The cafe, once alive with soft hums of conversation, faded into a lonely place echoing only my despair, and then Chloe approached my table, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "Hey, are you alright?" But before I could respond, the door swung back open, and my heart raced as I recognized the figure that stepped in behind a familiar face. It was my estranged sister, Amy, a ghost from another chapter of my forgotten past. "Mom," she called out, and the way she spoke my name held a tremor filled with secrets I feared, terrified revelations beyond what I could handle in that moment of fragility. In the embrace of these unfolding events, I stood on the precipice of my emotions, unprepared for what was about to come crashing into my turbulent heart. The air crackled with tension as Amy's gaze met mine, the years pouring into the space between us like rushing waters. I was strangled by both joy and dread. My sister had once been my confidant, the thread connecting me to happiness in simpler times, but the weight of abandonment still loomed heavy. "Amy," I finally managed, the name tumbling out like a promise ID long forgotten. She looked different, not just older, but burdened by unseen struggles. Her eyes held shadows I hadn't noticed before, and an unsteady smile danced on her lips. "Wow, it's been a while, hasn't it?" she said, each word carefully chosen as if to feign nonchalance. It sent a stab of guilt through me. I had not just lost touch with my sister but with who I had once been. "Yeah, just a bit," I muttered, my voice thin and shaky. "What brings you here?" She shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Chloe, whose presence felt like a fleeting shield against the swell of emotions. I heard you were back in town. Thought maybe we could talk," Amy said, wringing her hands. "Talk about what?" I prompted, suspicion edging into my heart. She took a hesitant step closer. "About everything. About Jake. About our family." The tremor in her voice betrayed her resolve, and I braced myself for the conversations that could either soothe or shatter us. The cafe felt like a bubble around us, a hazy world where old wounds could be opened anew. I inhaled deeply, searching for the right words that eluded me. "You know how it is. Things get complicated. I just didn't expect to see you here, of all places that I didn't expect to be here either," she replied softly, her gaze shifting to the empty seat across from me. "But Amy, what happened? You left without saying goodbye. Why?" The edge of desperation crept into my voice, fed by the memories that surfaced like ghosts in the fog of time. She inhaled sharply, visibly wrestling with something heavy. "I made choices that I thought would save me. The kind that came with their own price." Her eyes glistened, hinting at battles I hadn't known she had fought. "Did it?" I asked, feeling the raw urgency in the question. "Did it save you?" "I thought it did," she whispered, her facade cracking ever so slightly. "But it led to so much pain. For everyone." An ache blossomed in my heart. I could see the faint traces of regret writ large across her features. The things left unsaid formed an exquisite and terrifying masterpiece of what could have been. "What are you trying to say?" I pressed, willing her to share the burden she carried, knowing we had long since lost the ability to bear our individual weight in solitude. Before she could answer, Chloe broke the tension with a gentle nudge. "Hey, why don't we take this outside? The fresh air might help." I nodded, my heart pounding as I looked at my sister, searching for a flicker of hope to guide us into this fragile reconciliation. We stepped out, the crisp air wrapping around us, refreshing but also chilling. "Things are different now," Amy began hesitantly, her eyes darting distantly. Her voice took on a quieter tone, burdened by the secrets still clinging to the surface. "I heard about Mom, about her condition." Each word sat like a stone in my gut, the weight of our mother's struggles seeping into the fissures of our past. "Yeah, she's not well. Are you okay?" "You seem fine," I snapped, more sharply than intended. "No, I'm not fine." The honesty slipped out, raw and unrestrained. Amy took a step back, her expression torn between concern and hurt. "Look, I know I'm not the one to give advice, but if you need support, I want to help." The intensity of her offer struck me, remnants of our childhood brushed through my mind, nights spent whispering secrets, promising to stand by one another. But you're not here. You left me to shoulder our family's burdens alone. The accusation hung heavy between us, laced with years of unanswered questions. I didn't know what to do. She shot back, a fiery glimmer igniting her eyes. I was drowning. I couldn't be the sister you needed, the daughter I needed you, Amy. When I needed someone to fight for me, I interrupted, the dam of emotions finally breaking. But all I felt was the silence of your absence. Her gaze flickered, and in that moment, something unexplainable rippled beneath the surface between us, an invitation to reconnect. I'm here now. I want. But before she could finish, the chaos of the cafe erupted back into my consciousness. The door flew open again, a rush of wind spilling multiple voices outside. A crowd emerged, and among them, I noticed a familiar figure. It was Jake, and he was with Angela, who was wearing an expression of unbridled elation. Jake. I called out, instinctively reaching for him, my entire heart clasped in desperation. He turned, but the look on his face was not what I had hoped for. There was a blend of shame and defiance etched into his features, and my heart plummeted, suspended in this moment of unyielding agony, and as Angela wrapped her arm around his waist, pulling him close, I felt the fissures deepen further. The weight of our family's history and the fracture of our relationships converged, and I was being pushed back into the tumult of despair. Amy, I gasped, panic racing through my veins as I faced her. I can't. But she was already watching him too, understanding settling over her face, leaving us standing there, surrounded by an unexpected present that felt even more broken than the past. The echo of my son's laughter, once a bright note strumming across the chords of my heart, now pierced me like shards of glass. All the hopes of reclaiming him felt like they were scattered in the whirlwind of an unforgiving fate. The weight of my unspoken fears loomed, refusing to be ignored. As Jake moved further into the crowd with Angela, my world shattered into a fragmented haze, pulling me away from anyone who could save me. Each step they took felt like a forgotten promise, and as I strained to reach for the pieces of my family, I knew that despair awaited me at the turn of the tide. The chill in the air wrapped around me like a tightening noose as I stood frozen, the shock of seeing Jake enveloping me in an icy grip. Amy's presence beside me felt like both a lifeline and a weight, anchoring me in this moment that felt increasingly surreal. I barely registered her hand reaching out, gently touching my arm, grounding me as I tried to process the scene unfolding before us. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern etching lines into her brow that mirrored my own turmoil. "Okay?" I echoed incredulously, my breaths coming in faster gasps. "No, I'm not okay. Do you see what's happening?" The painful reality struck me with the force of a tidal wave. Jake had moved on. He stood there, smiling down at Angela, a stark contrast to my world of shadows. Their laughter cut through me a sweet melody that now sounded foreign and harsh. I had not anticipated this, not now, especially not when our family was teetering on the brink of collapse. "Look," Amy stepped closer, her voice gentle yet insistent, "this isn't the end. You can still talk to him." The thought felt as heavy as a boulder lodged in my chest. Talking? How could I even find the words? When I had last spoken to him, we were united by grief, and now he was here, seemingly unscathed, diving headfirst into a life where I no longer belonged. "I can't just go up to him after everything," I breathed, my worst fears wrestling for control. "What am I supposed to say? Hey, son, I've now become a distant memory in your new life?" "Maybe not like that," Amy replied softly, a warmth creeping into her tone. "But look, maybe he just doesn't know how to reach out to you either. When family falls apart, it's hard to put the pieces back together." Her words settled into my heart. It felt like they were the tender hands of hope trying to stitch me back together, one frayed thread at a time. For a fleeting moment, I contemplated approaching Jake, my heart racing with uncertainty and longing. But as I shifted, trying to find the courage to move towards him, I saw a flash of something behind his eyes, a hint of guilt that mirrored my own devastation. My heart twisted, recalling the memories of our once wondrous bond, now distorted into echoes of past happiness. Before I could make a decision, the chime of a bell rang out from the cafe behind us, jolting my focus back to the present. A well-dressed man, a stranger in the midst of this tangled web of emotions, stepped forward with purpose. He approached our small gathering, oblivious to the tumult around us. Excuse me, he said, his voice smooth and authoritative, capturing my attention. Are you Amy and? I watched as Amy's eyes narrowed, recognizing a hint of suspicion in her posture. Who wants to know? The stranger held out a business card, a polished veneer of professionalism evident on the surface. My name is Thomas Finch. I was asked to find you. It's regarding your mother. My heart lurched at the mention of Mom, my fraying connection to reality, and despair instantly hit me anew. What about her? Please, let's step aside, he said, glancing briefly at Jake and Angela, who had gathered further back, oblivious to the growing tension. The implication of something more significant boiled under the surface, and I felt a new wave of anxiety mounting. As we began to move, I glanced back at Jake one last time, hoping for an answer, a sign that there was still a sliver of connection left between us, but he was lost in laughter with Angela, retreating further into an unknown space where I no longer existed. Your mother has taken a turn for the worse, Thomas continued, leading us away from the bustling cafe. The air around us began to buzz with a frantic energy, charged with a foreboding sense that I needed to brace myself for what was to come. You both need to come with me. There are some important decisions to be made. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to release its weighty burden. I glanced at Amy, whose own expression mirrored my dread, a crack forming beneath her composure. What do you mean decisions? I demanded, my heart pounding as fear gnawed at my insides. Your mother has expressed her wishes, he responded, something in his tone chilling me further. And the responsibility rests on both of you now. A suffocating pressure enveloped me as my mind reeled. I had hoped to find solace in this fragile moment with Amy, possibly even reach some understanding with Jake. But the prospect of confronting our mother's fate and navigating the revelations held within that stern business card threatened to drown us in a sea of fresh anguish. Just when I thought I couldn't bear another layer of despair, Amy's hands brushed against mine, her grip steadying me as we faced whatever was to come next. The warmth of her touch sparked a flicker of hope. Perhaps we could navigate these waters together, muddied as they were. But as I stood at the precipice of decisions, knowing this was just the beginning of a fresh round of challenges, deep-seated fears bubbled up. What if we couldn't pull our family back from the brink, and the weight of our mother's condition became the final chapter of our broken relationship? The uncertainty loomed like a shadow behind me. I felt the shift, a chasm growing wider. Just then, the weight of the impending decisions pressed heavily down, tossing me into an unknown future, aching for a hand to hold as the storm gathered overhead. The air felt thicker than before, pressing against my lungs as we stepped away from the crowded cafe. I could barely process the implications of Thomas Finch's words. They echoed in my mind like a haunting melody. I followed him, a feeling of dread coiling tightly around my chest, and glanced over my shoulder one last time. Jake was still engrossed in laughter with Angela, so blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing just steps away. What does she want? I asked, my voice trembling. What could she possibly want from us now? Amy's expression mirrored my shock but held a spark of determination too. We owe it to Mom to listen. We owe it to each other. As I slowly nodded, doubt scratched at the edges of my resolve. Was there really anything left to salvage? The fractures in our family felt like a rickety bridge over turbulent waters, and we were mere inches from the edge. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the weight of the decision that loomed ahead. Thomas led us to a small, private office in the back of the cafe where the ambience shifted, draining the laughter and light from outside into shadows. The walls were painted in muted tones, adorned with heavy leather furniture that seemed to reflect the solemnity of our situation. A polished oak desk took center stage, and atop it lay several files, each one likely holding pieces of the life and struggles of the woman who once raised us. Please, have a seat, he gestured to two chairs opposite him, while I fought the desire to spring from my seat and run back to the joyous laughter of Jake and Angela. Instead, I sat down heavily, my heart in my throat. As Thomas shuffled through the papers, his expression hardened into something concerned. Your mother has been experiencing exacerbated health issues, he began, his voice steady yet laced with something I couldn't quite place. She's in a delicate state and wants to discuss her care decisions. She has expressed some preferences? I interrupted, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. How could we possibly discuss preferences when they held no regard for her well-being? Mom had always been a fighter, and it was hard for me to accept that she was now at the mercy of her own frailty. Yes, he said, looking directly at me. Her care is currently in your hands. She has designated you both as her primary decision-makers. That I turned to Amy, her eyes wide, mirroring my disbelief. What does that mean? How can we make decisions when we can't even talk to each other? Your mother indicated that she doesn't want extensive medical intervention. However, her condition will require constant monitoring. She's expressed a wish for comfort over aggressive treatment, Thomas replied, attempting to guide us through a maze of emotional turmoil. Comfort? Amy echoed. You meanies, he interjected gently. She is aware of her condition and wants to avoid prolonged suffering. A chill swept through me. I thought of the image of my mother, once strong and vibrant, reduced to this fragile reality. The memories crashed over Meher laughter, her guidance during our darkest hours, the way she always believed in us even when we felt lost. I can't. My voice was barely above a whisper. I don't even know how to say goodbye. At that moment, the facade of control I maintained began to crack. My head spun, and tears threatened to spill as raw anguish poured into my chest. If we were truly at the end of something, I needed to find a way to say what had to be said. To find closure, reconcile the love that should still linger, despite everything that had unraveled. Amy reached for my hand, her grip firm and steady. We will get through this, she assured, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Together, but how could we be united in our grief when the fracture between us felt so deep? Before I could voice my fears, Thomas cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had descended like a blanket of frost. Your mother asked me to convey something else, he said, shifting in his seat as if bracing himself for the impact. She believes there are things you both need to know about. About your father, Dad? I breathed, the word escaping me like a puff of smoke. What does he have to do with this? Your mother believes reconciliation is possible, even before we reach that point. She wishes to lay everything on the table. Your father has been attempting to reach out. The ground tilted beneath me as confusion collided with anger. After all these years, he suddenly wants to come back to fix things? When everything is falling apart, I can't answer for him. I can only tell you what your mother expressed to me, Thomas replied cautiously. She hoped that perhaps there might be a possibility of healing, for her sake and your own. The thought of my father stepping back into our lives unleashed a torrent of emotions I wasn't prepared to handle. I didn't want to share the space of my mother's end with a man who had chosen to abandon us when we needed him most. He should have been there, he should have fought for our family. That I felt Amy's hand tighten around mine, her warmth pushing back against the storm brewing within me. But just as I began to grasp a fragile thread of understanding, the door swung open, and in walked Jake, his expression shifting from joyful to confused as he spotted me and Amy with their unexpected visitor. Mom? He called out hesitantly, the laughter of moments before fading into a tense silence. What's going on? There it was, the moment I both dreaded and desired. A chance to bridge the chasm of disconnection between us. But the fear surged in me like raw electricity. What would I say? How would I explain this shocking revelation that we were teetering on the edge of a decision that could change everything? And then, as if the universe had conspired to push me further into uncharted waters, I felt a surge of absolute urgency to hold on to whatever fragments light I could find. I swallowed hard, my next words trembling on the tip of my tongue. But before I could summon the courage to speak, the world as I knew it began to shift again, leaving me at the precipice of uncertainty and unforeseen heartbreak. The atmosphere in the small office was alive with tension, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Jake stepped deeper inside, his confusion palpable as he stood before us, a bright contrast to the shadows swirling around our hearts. His innocent gaze held a question that felt as heavy as the truth we had been grappling with. Are you okay? He asked, glancing from me to Amy and then Thomas. Each word dripped with a sincerity that momentarily struck through the gloom surrounding us. I could see the boy who had once sought comfort in my arms, longing for reassurance amid the tremors of family upheaval. I opened my mouth, desperate to weave some semblance of a narrative that wouldn't shatter him, but the truth was a monstrous weight lodged in my throat. Instead, the silence that followed mirrored the uncertainty in our hearts, and it felt like a betrayal to admit that things were far from okay. It's about Mom, isn't it? Jake said, his voice small, flaring with a flicker of fear. What happened? Is she okay? His questions carved through me, igniting a familiar panic. He didn't deserve this burden, this split between joy and despair. Yet, as I looked into his eyes, I knew I couldn't shield him forever. We need to talk about her condition, I finally whispered, choking on the reality that had become our defining moment. Jake's face paled, his brow furrowing in concern. What do you mean? In that instant, Amy stepped in, gently guiding him to sit beside us. There are things we need to know, Jake, she said, her voice steady yet warm, an anchor pulling us back from the brink. She's unwell, and we need to discuss what that means moving forward. His expression shifted to confusion, then deep concern as the reality began to sink in. Forward? What does that mean? Before any of us could answer, Thomas cleared his throat, ready to navigate the turbulent waters that had suddenly become our lives. Your mother communicated some preferences regarding her care, he spoke softly, glancing at each of us. They include her wish for comfort over aggressive treatment. The word comfort echoed in the small room, wrapping around us like a shroud. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat, grappling with the implications. Is she going to be okay? He asked again, this time with a broken edge of denial. I felt his pain, as if each question was a dagger aimed directly at my heart. I think. I hesitated, scrambling for words as a wave of guilt swept through me. I think she wants to spend her time in a way that honors who she is, with peace. Jake's jaw tightened with a blend of anger and disbelief. So we just let her go? We just let her be? I don't understand. Amy leaned toward him, eyes brimming with empathy. It's okay to feel that way. We are all struggling to understand. But we have to respect her wishes, Jake. She wants us to come together as a family during this time. Family? He scoffed, his frustration boiling over. What kind of family are we when we can't even face the truth? You both look so sad, and I'm just supposed to sit here and accept it. The tension in the room escalated. It felt both unbearable and necessary. In that moment of raw honesty, I sensed the hidden pain in Jake, pain that mirrored our own, that had festered beneath the surface for too long. I was reminded of how loss could fracture connections but also reveal profound truths waiting to be discovered. Suddenly, a soft knock on the door interrupted our heavy heartache. It swung open, revealing a familiar face, Angela, with her kind smile and gentle demeanor. She appeared as a beacon of light amid the storm, holding a fragrant cup of tea in hand that radiated comfort. I thought you might need this, she said, scanning the tense expressions in the room as warmth radiated from her presence. Her eyes widened slightly upon noticing the charged atmosphere. Is everything all right? Not really, I admitted, exposing my emotional rawness. We're just trying to understand what's happening with Mom. Without hesitation, Angela stepped inside, her presence pushing back against the weight of despair that had clouded our gathering. You're not alone in this. You all deserve to express what you feel, even the anger. Jake stood up, breathing heavily as pent-up frustration poured out. How can you say that? What's the point of all this? She's just gone. Angela approached him slowly, grounding the moment of chaos with her steady presence. It's hard to feel like someone is slipping away, especially when you're not ready to let go. But it's okay to feel angry, upset. It's valid, Jake. He stood still, the fire in his eyes now mingling with vulnerability as he searched her gaze, hoping perhaps for a glimmer of understanding in the midst of chaos. For a moment, the emotion blossomed in the room like a soft flower breaking through concrete. Angela reached out cautiously and, when Jake grasped her hand, I felt the beginnings of healing amidst the sorrow. As they shared a moment of connection, I turned back to Amy, who nodded encouragingly but with a shadow of pain still clinging to her features. We can't back away from this, she whispered. This is our chance to face everything. Just then, as though cued by fate, Thomas shifted uneasily in his seat, glancing toward the door. I received a message that your father would like to speak with you soon. His words hung in the air like a time bomb about to detonate, and my heart plummeted at the thought. Jake recoiled at the mention, his expression morphing into one of deep disgust. Him? Why now? Why would we want to see him? The questions flooded back with a rush, pushing against my resolve. It was a storm I thought we could hold back, but here it was undeniable and potent, a revelation we were unprepared to face. I glanced from Jake to Amy and back to Angela, the uncertainty palpable as I struggled to find the words. Because maybe it's time to confront the past, I finally responded, barely above a whisper, but as I spoke, the gaping hole in my heart widened. What were we unraveling? What if the family bonds we sought to mend only pulled further apart at the seams, and there, on the cusp of a revelation that threatened to tear us asunder, I felt the weight of many unspoken words. Would we find the strength necessary to face our truths, or would we break under the pressure of our choices? In the fragile silence that lingered, I knew somewhere within that haze of grief, anger, and bewilderment lay the path toward healing. But how much more could we endure before the threads began to fray beyond repair? The day after the emotional confrontation in that small office at the cafe, I couldn't shake the weight of everything that had transpired. A hush fell over the nursing home, and I could sense the gravity in the air as I walked the sterile corridors, each step echoing the inner turmoil of unspoken fears. My heart pounded as I thought of Mom, lying vulnerable, needing us in ways we hadn't yet been willing to acknowledge, after fighting against the tides of pain and uncertainty for months. As the clock ticked down on her time, I couldn't allow myself to ignore what needed to be said. I pulled myself up in the mirror of my small room, viewing the tired reflection of a woman whose essence felt slowly eroded. But today, I had a purpose, fragile though it may be. As I stepped out, I saw Jake standing by the entrance, his face illuminated by thin slivers of morning light streaming through the aging glass. He looked lost in thought, his eyes scanning the horizon as if he were searching for answers in the clouds. "Hey," I said softly, breaking the fragile stillness that wrapped around us. That he turned slowly, an indecipherable expression painted across his features. "I didn't sleep well," he admitted, shrugging his shoulders as if the weight of the night lingered still. "All I could think about was everything we discussed yesterday." "About Mom." "Me too," I confessed, stepping closer. "I've been thinking about how much she needs all of us right now." My voice trembled as words tried to rush forth, but fear clawed at my throat. Would he hear me if I opened up about Dad? Jake interrupted, his expression darkening as anger flared again. I just can't get how he just waltzes back now. How could he, after everything?" "It makes me so angry too," I agreed, every syllable dripping with despair. "But what if now's not the moment to focus on him? What if we need to put all of that away for Mom? To unite as a family to show her we care." The words hung heavily in the air, coloring the space between us. He shifted uncomfortably, contemplating the gulf of expectation that seemed to swell larger. "But if we let him back in, doesn't that make everything he did okay? I can't even think about him being part of this journey. That we can't change the past," I said, my heart racing as I reached out, determined to grasp onto whatever flicker of hope lingered between us. "But maybe, just maybe, we can change how the story unfolds. What if we look at this differently? Not about him, but about us and Mom." For the first time, I caught a brief glimpse of something brightening in his eyes, a crack in the armor of denial before it flickered away. "I don't know," Jake replied, his voice low, a reflection of the pain that swayed his heart. "Every time I think about it, I keep feeling like it's all going to come crashing down." "Exactly. We're holding on to things that may crush us even more," I pressed. "But we also have each other. We have a chance to unify for Mom, to embrace her needs before anything else." My words settled, silence enveloped us, a symphony of uncertainty and hope. Slowly, I stepped closer to him, allowing my warmth to seep through the tension. "Isn't that what family really means? Facing storms together, even if it shakes us to our core." He hesitated, the turmoil churning behind his eyes. I could almost hear the battle of emotions waging within him, the call of bitterness clashing with the need for reconciliation. His shoulders relaxed just the slightest. "An invitation for trust that I can try," he said finally, a soft surrender threading through his voice. "I don't know if I can forgive him, but for Mom, I'll try. I don't want her to suffer more than she has to." "Neither do I," I replied, a gentle smile breaking through the storm cloud hovering over us. "So let's channel everything we feel into something meaningful." For her, with a newfound sense of strength, we made our way toward our mother's room, united not merely by blood but by the shared understanding that life etched deep shadows across our souls. And as we stepped into her space, the familiar scent of hospital antiseptic filled the air, but beside it lingered a whiff of something that felt even more powerful. Love. Mom was nestled in bed, frail but surrounded by mementos of life and warmth. Little pictures from our childhood plastered across the wall, the magazine cutouts of happy moments, and notes we had left for her over time, all whispering stories that made our family. Seeing her brought an unsteady surge of love and fear and regret, all of it swirling together in an emotional dance. "Hey, Mom," I said softly, and she blinked awake, light breaking across her weary face, a smile emerging like a blossom breaking through the frost. Her eyes glimmered, shimmering with unshed tears. "Hey, you," she replied, her voice hoarse. The sound of it was enough to pull at my heartstrings. "Jake's here," I said gently, holding onto him firmly as he took an apprehensive step closer. "We thought you might want to talk." Jake swallowed hard, fear etched across his face. "Mom, too want to hear what you wanted to tell us." The moment hung delicately, pregnant with emotions yet endangered by the burden of our past. She shifted in her bed, drawing in a shaky breath as the sun cast patterns across her face. "I don't have easy words, my loves," she began, her voice trembling like dry leaves. "But what I wish for the both of you is to remember that you're stronger than the pain we've faced. I want you to hold on to each other." Her words unfurled into the room, wrapping around us like a soothing balm, mending long broken ties. Family is precious, no matter how frayed. Life isn't always simple, but love is always worth fighting for. A tear slipped down my cheek, and as if sensing my vulnerability, she reached out her frail hand, beckoning for us to join her. "Through every storm, I want you to find your way back to each other, even when it feels impossible." And as we gathered closer, hand in hand, everything came crashing down. The weight of all our anger, betrayal, and grief fused into an unyielding bond that promised reconciliation. I glanced at Jake, and our eyes met in acknowledgement of the road ahead, filled with uncertainty but also renewed hope. "That I love you both," Mom whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, yet strong against the struggle she faced. "You're my greatest gifts." As we shared that fragile but powerful moment, something within us shifted. Pain morphed into forgiveness, doubt blossomed into acceptance. United, we vowed not just to hold time but to embrace it. A decision loomed in our hearts, not just for the impending reality of our mother's health but as a promise to conquer the fractures of our family together. And as the sun slanted through the window, illuminating our sacred space, I knew that love would guide us away from the abyss into the light that led us home. We may have been lost once, but now we had found a way to weave our hearts together, stronger than the trials we faced. In that moment, as I held on to both my son and mother, that fragile thread of connection spun tighter, enveloping us in a shared promise, no longer lost, but found and loved fiercely, come what may. Time surged forward, and I felt breathless as spirit dancing against the chaos of life anew, as hope ignited within our hearts. And finally, I whispered, "We are never unworthy of love."